So Smile Down the Runway once again giving us another amazing episode. This show, it just knows how to be exhilarating and have such a steady pace where a lot of things are happening, but it's not speeding by. It's having that time to decompress, focus in on characters who are just supporting characters, but when you look at someone like Kokoro and just her dream of being a designer, also having the talents to be a model and not being taken seriously, that is just as an intriguing plotline as someone like Iketo wanting to be an amazing designer, be able to, really support his family, not have to give up on his dream, but also not let his parents and, his family and things like that suffer in the process. This show knows how to do emotional storytelling without making it feel cheesy or just, shoved down our throats, and we just are like, okay, you're really trying too hard, and in doing so, falling flat on your face. I mean, when you see that moment where she's basically being dragged off, I thought at first it was like a parent kind of like dragging your child home, being like, you've been a bad girl, something like that. That moment could easily just be a knight in shining armor moment with no emotional depth, but it was anything but that. It was actually like, hey, this is a character who, yes, struggles to stick up for himself at times. I mean, you can see that when basically people were making fun of him for not having the money or kind of like scraping by the money to be able to enter this competition. But I mean, when it comes to people he has a connection to, whether it be someone he works with or is friends with or has some form of deeper connection, it's nice how he sticks up for them, even though he knows maybe I don't have that backbone for myself, but someone I care for, I'm definitely going to stick up. And I thought it was a believable reason for like a management being that aggressive. I mean, if you have someone who's like your all-star and you see them basically playing dress up, trying to make clothes, it's obvious why you would look at that as being anything but mature. For being a designer, we've clearly seen in this show, it is a very excruciating task. It's something that, a lot of people, they try to just play designer, and in doing so, they make everyone think it's just a gimmick or a joke. They don't take it seriously, and it pisses off designers. We've seen that with Iketo himself. It took him a lot of negotiating to land a position to be able to even be taken seriously for such a young age. So it's understandable why they would do this, but it's also very heartbreaking to see someone who clearly has the talent and the passion for it basically being treated as an object. And I love that moment in this episode, and I especially love that moment kind of almost being repaid, where you have a character who I was like, man, I'm going to hate this character. She's always putting her boy down. But I was like, you know what? Once again, highlighting that people don't have to be friends, but they can stick up when they see things not going okay. Yeah, maybe he doesn't come from the richest family, but he's scraped by the money. Yes, he's scraped by it, but money is money. And I love that moment where she stands up for him and how he wants to basically repay the kindness. And, it's kind of like a sports team, right? Imagine a bunch of athletes all competing to join in the professional leagues. Sure, you can get along, but at the end of the day, you guys are kind of rivals. You're enemies in a lot of ways, but it doesn't mean you have to be an asshole to each other, and you can show respect and kindness and be genuine. And that's what I'm really liking about Ikito's character, is he's not falling into the trap of being super generic and basic, where, he's just super nice, and yeah, he may struggle, but everything's gonna work out because he's such a nice guy. No, this is the world of fashion. It is a dog-eat-dog world. But I like how he's not falling into the just habit of just being a complete and utter asshole. He understands he has to stand his ground. He understands that he can't be a pushover, but he's not going to abandon his core characteristics either. I mean, I can completely understand why some people consider Iketo to be the main character of the show, even though him and Chiyuki are kind of both main characters, they're dual main characters. But I think it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be, depending on the arc, we may see a lot of Chiyuki, or we may see her more on the sidelines. Definitely is feeling like Iketo is going to be the main focus 100% of the whole designing, which does make sense as we are creating the things and whatnot. And of course, I imagine there'll be times where maybe we'll get to see Chiyuki in Paris or something like that. But still, even though she isn't getting as much of a spotlight, which is a shame in some ways, we're still getting content that still feels equally memorable, just in a different way. And I love seeing that moment towards the end of the episode, once again doing something that easily could be fan service, but was actually pretty emotional in terms of showing that growth, in terms of how, you can't just look at a body and get overly flustered if you want to be in the world of fashion. That scene could easily just be, oh look, he's so embarrassed, clearly, trying to set that ship, the Chiyuki x Iketo ship, and I love how he is very embarrassed, but she's just doing her exercises. She recognizes, yeah, he's getting flustered over my body, get over it, you're trying to design clothes for women, you can't get all hot and bothered by this, right? I love how they immediately shut it down and just force him to do the exercises along her, but also highlighting how she pretty much is doing just as amazing of a job as this Sarah chick, but of course, she hasn't reached that point to be taken seriously, also highlighting how, even though we haven't seen her in the spotlight, Chiki is doing her damn hardest to make sure that she's going to get where she needs to go, and that's great. I mean, even if she's not on screen, it's nice to see that she's still doing her own thing, like wearing heels inside, which must be very uncomfortable, but if you want to be able to make it as a shorter model, you're going to have to find a way to compensate for your lack of height, or have clothes that can really bring out your beautiful figure. And this is something that's pretty interesting in terms of like this competition that could truly shape Ikito's life in a completely new direction. Be able to get, his own line of clothing possibly. Be able to go to Paris, which would obviously probably tie to Chiki as well, bringing her along or something to that nature. Having something that could completely revolutionize his life, but, logically speaking, he probably won't win. But if he does win, that will set in motion something completely interesting. And that's what I'm really liking, is you can see a route where they write the story of him winning, be able to start his own line early, and it could work if he really did come up with an idea that will match Sarah so wonderfully, because Sarah reminds him of Chiyuki. That could easily happen, but if he fails, it doesn't mean that's the end of the story either. There's another route that they could follow, and both would be equally memorable, and I love that about this show, where it's not held down by only letting characters succeed, or only letting characters fail until we reach the end. No, there's a lot of possibilities, and in doing so is creating something that feels very interesting. I think his idea of kind of like a mix and match of fabrics, this kind of like slap together style, is his specialty. And honestly, I thought it was going to work out for him. I thought he was going to do decent but fail with this design, but, kind of be complimented for his, like, patchwork. But I like how that immediately backfired, where he's like, this worked for my family, but that's not going to work for her and her beauty and her elegance. Like, this is the top model. I can't do this. And I love how they did reintroduce Chiki in this episode, which I thought we were getting none of her. So it was nice to see that, and basically how he kind of got this, like, brilliant idea, and I kind of wish we got to see it in this episode, but you gotta have that cliffhanger to lead us into next week. But, Kokoro, I have to say, was a character I thought I was going to enjoy but not really care when she was on screen, if that makes sense, where, like, she's on screen, it's cool, but I'm not, like, anticipating her character. After this week, I am. She's a character who definitely has her emotional maturity and immaturity, but I like how she kind of feels like, what she's trying to do, may go against the general public's view on what should happen with her physique and things like that. You're a model, be a model, things like that, but I like how someone like Ikito can really see the potential and want to support that. I like the idea of friendship in this show, where even though they clearly are setting up for the viewers to say which ship do they like more, do they prefer the Ikito x Kokoro ship, or do they prefer Chiyuki? I'm sure they definitely are trying their hardest to give you multiple, like, oh, we really want you to, debate which one you like better. But I think in comparison to what happened when he walked up to that door and how flustered he's still getting over Chiyuki, I think we can see where his heart lies, at least at this point in time. But still, even though they are clearly setting up for some of those moments, which you may be able to call a little more cliche, I still like how on a personality level and story level, they are doing anything but cliche. It actually feels like genuine people chasing their dream, even though the world in general is trying to hold them down and saying, you are pointless and you can't do this. Follow the trends that have been laid out before you. You have the height, you have the body, you're a model, not a designer. Stop playing it. Like, there is that emotional, like, you want it. You want to see it. You want to see it go. But at the same time, it's going to be a struggle. But that struggle is what makes it interesting. And I gotta say, when I saw the mother in this episode, I thought it was a little sweet moment. I was like, oh, he's visiting mom. Mom's all proud of him. And then you saw, like, the person with, like, the medical records, like, walking, looking all depressed. It's like, they're going to set up for something dark, aren't they? I'm both looking forward and also terrified to see what's going to happen with the mother's condition, especially if it, worsens in the middle of a really important competition. That's going to be brutal, I have to say. And, like, the fact of, like, if you had to rush to the hospital and, like, abandon the fashion show or something, like, they're clearly setting up for something more devastating, and I'm both terrified but also very excited to see what they're going to do with it, because the more emotional, the more interesting, but the more painful all in the process. And this episode in particular definitely had some flair. I mean, there was a lot of, like, interesting stylistic choices in how they either lit up or completely dimmed the mood to make it both, like, soul-crushing, as if dreams were being crushed, or they were lighting it up to make it feel like there was this wave of optimism, as if things are gonna be okay. A lot of people rip into productions such as these because it's not, like, moving as much as, say, something like from Ufotable or something like that. But in the style that this is for, like, a runway modeling, a fashion show, I think what they're doing with their presentations in terms of how they're shifting up the art style, and when they do go into the more animation moments, where, you're looking at someone walking down the runway, or you're watching them do something with their hands in terms of creating an object, I think they do a really solid job. Yes, it's not the flashiest of shows, But I think for the style of anime this is, the way they're using flash and spectacle, I think is the perfect route. And I really wouldn't change it if I'm being honest. I love looking at this anime and I never really feel disappointed by the production like I've seen some criticize. Yes, this isn't the most talented of teams in the anime world, but I have to say, after this production, I think people probably, at least if you enjoy this anime, are going to take them a little more seriously because I don't think this is an issue with how they're designing it. I'm loving it and the voice actors are continuing to hit it out of the park. This was a great episode. I keep loving this show and I keep loving it more and more. And I'm both excited and terrified to see where they're going to take it next week, because they got a lot of potential to either ruin or just really raise these characters up, and I'm always excited to see what they're going to do. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, be it for source material readers, anime originals like myself, let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happy new round here. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.